The crystal chandeliers of the Plaza Hotel gleamed like frozen tears that night. Beneath their glow, Emily Carter stood trembling in her silver gown, one hand resting on her swollen belly, the other gripping her clutch like it could save her. Around her, laughter sparkled, champagne glasses clinking, expensive perfume floating in the air, luxury dripping from every corner. It was supposed to be her husband's victory gala, Ryan Mitchell's moment, as a rising entrepreneur in Manhattan. But Emily's smile was just a mask. She already knew. Just 3 days earlier, she had seen the messages on Ryan's iPhone. The same man who promised to love her till the end of time had been meeting Chloe Summers, the influencer, with the perfect hair and fake compassion. Emily hadn't confronted him. Not yet. She wanted to believe it was a misunderstanding. But tonight, as she watched Chloe's hand linger too long on Ryan's arm, that illusion shattered. Ryan, tall and sleek in his black tuxedo, looked at Emily the way one might look at an inconvenience. "Don't cause a scene," he whispered through gritted teeth, still smiling for the cameras. "We'll talk at home." But the damage was done. Guests were already whispering eyes darting between the glowing wife and the smug influencer. Emily's pulse quickened. She felt the baby move inside her, as if sensing the storm. Across the ballroom, Alexander Reed watched silently. The billionaire tech CEO, known for his ruthless business acumen, had no reason to be involved except for one. Emily had once redesigned his penthouse. She was kind, professional, and real, something rare in his world of empty deals and fake smiles. Tonight, he saw something break behind her eyes, and something in him stirred. When the announcement came, Ryan toasting, "The woman who changed my life," and then pulling Chloe beside him instead of Emily, the crowd gasped. The humiliation hit her like glass shattering in slow motion. Emily's vision blurred. She dropped her clutch, hearing the metallic sound echo like judgment. Her knees weakened, but she stood tall, refusing to cry in front of them. "Congratulations," she said softly, her voice trembling but proud. "You finally got the woman you wanted." Then she turned and walked out, heels clicking on marble like a countdown. Outside, Manhattan was cold. The lights from Fifth Avenue blurred through her tears. She reached the parking level, pressing the unlock button on her Toyota, but footsteps followed. "Emily," Ryan's voice angry, slurred from too much whiskey. She turned. He looked wild, desperate. "You ruined me in front of them. You think you can just walk away?" "Walk away," she said, trembling. "After you humiliated me? After you—" He raised his hand not to hit her, but to pull something from his coat. Metal gleamed under the fluorescent light. "A gun." "Ryan, no," she cried, stepping back. Her hand went instinctively to her belly. "Please, the baby." "Then don't make me do this," his voice cracked. "You were supposed to stay quiet." Before she could move, a voice thundered from behind. "Drop it, Mitchell." Alexander Reed. He'd followed her. Still, in his tailored navy suit, his expression was pure steel. Ryan turned, rage overtaking reason. The gun fired. The sound was deafening in the underground stillness. Emily screamed, and the world went white. When she opened her eyes, Alexander was on the ground, blood spreading across his chest. He'd taken the bullet for her, and Ryan was gone. "No, no, don't leave me," she whispered, kneeling beside Alexander as the sirens wailed in the distance. Her silver gown stained crimson under the cold light. Somewhere above them, Manhattan kept shining as if nothing had happened. But nothing would ever be the same again. The paramedics moved fast, but time seemed to crawl for Emily. Her trembling hands were soaked in Alexander's blood as they lifted him onto the stretcher. The sirens painted the walls of the parking garage, red and blue, flashing like guilt itself. Her silver gown clung to her body, heavy and sticky with fear. The baby kicked again. She whispered through sobs, "Please hold on, Alex, please." At Mount Sinai Hospital, the sterile scent of antiseptic filled the air. Emily sat in the waiting area, wrapped in a Navy hospital blanket. Her mascara had long since smudged, but she didn't care. The world outside those glass doors kept spinning, but hers had stopped. The city skyline beyond the window looked distant, cruel its glitter, mocking her shattered life. When the doctor finally emerged, his expression was grave. "He's alive," he said, but the bullet was close to his lung. We were able to remove it. He's in critical condition. Emily's knees nearly gave out. She covered her face with both hands, shaking. Relief and guilt crashed together like waves. A man she barely knew had risked everything to save her and her unborn child. Detective Marcus Hayes arrived soon after, his voice steady, his notepad ready. "Mrs. Mitchell, we need your statement. Can you tell me exactly what happened?" "Please," she whispered. "Call me Emily." She told him everything: the gala, Ryan's rage, the gunshot. Hayes listened, nodding slowly. "We've issued an APB for your husband. Security cameras caught him fleeing in a black Mercedes S-Class registered in his name. We'll find him." Emily nodded, but her voice was barely audible. "He wasn't always like this," she said. "He changed. After Chloe, people show their truth when they think no one's watching." Hayes replied softly. "You're lucky to be alive." When he left, Emily walked into Alexander's ICU room. Machines beeped steadily. The billionaire who once commanded boardrooms now lay pale beneath hospital lights. Tubes snaked across his chest, but even unconscious, he looked composed. She sat beside him, brushing his hair back gently. "You didn't even know me that well," she whispered, tears rolling down her cheeks. "Why would you do that?" In the corner of the room sat Alexander's assistant, Grace, a tall woman with sharp eyes softened by worry. "He said once that you reminded him of someone," Grace said quietly. "His wife. She died 5 years ago." He blamed himself. Emily's heart ached. Suddenly, the puzzle pieces fit. Alexander wasn't saving just her, he was saving the woman he couldn't save before. That night, Emily refused to leave his side. Nurses brought her a cup of Starbucks coffee and a pillow, and she curled up in the chair beside his bed, hands resting protectively on her belly. Outside, rain began to fall, the kind of slow, cleansing rain that made the city glow softer. Her phone buzzed. An unknown number. A text message. "You ruined my life. You'll pay for this. Ryan." Her stomach dropped. She looked around, fear tightening her chest. Grace noticed and quickly locked the room door. "We'll get security," she said firmly. Emily nodded, holding her phone close. She looked at Alexander again, his breathing shallow but steady. "You saved me once," she whispered. "Now I have to save both of us." She didn't know how yet. But something deep inside her, something stronger than fear, was waking up. Because the woman Ryan tried to destroy wasn't gone. She was just being reborn. Morning light crept through the hospital blinds, slicing the room into gold and gray. Emily hadn't slept. Her eyes burned from crying, but she couldn't look away from Alexander. His chest rose and fell under the thin blanket, each breath a small miracle. She whispered, "Please, wake up. You don't deserve to die for me." The nurse came in to check his vitals, glancing at Emily kindly. "You should get some rest, honey. Stress isn't good for the baby." Emily forced a smile. "I'll rest when he opens his eyes." In the hallway, the detective was back. Marcus Hayes carried a tablet this time, showing surveillance footage from the Plaza Hotel. Ryan's face appeared on screen, distorted, furious, holding Chloe by the arm. "We found them leaving the city," Marcus said. "They're probably hiding somewhere upstate. The FBI's getting involved now. Attempted murder of a pregnant woman and a high-profile CEO. This won't stay quiet." Emily's chest tightened. "You think he'll come after me again?" Marcus looked grim. "Men like him, when they lose control, they get dangerous." She turned back to the room. Alexander looked peaceful, but the machines around him beeped like a warning. Guilt gnawed at her. The memory of the gunshot kept replaying in her mind, the sound, the smell of smoke, his body collapsing in front of her. Grace walked in carrying a MacBook and a steaming cup of coffee. "He always hated hospitals," she said, setting the cup on the table. "If he wakes up and sees all this equipment, he'll fire everyone just to get some peace." Emily gave a weak laugh, then frowned. "If he wakes up?" Grace placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "When? He's too stubborn to die." Later that afternoon, Emily stepped outside for some air. The hospital courtyard overlooked Central Park, where autumn leaves swirled in the wind. She sat on a bench, clutching her phone. Her notifications were full of chaos news outlets, already reporting billionaire shot in scandalous love triangle. Her name wasn't public yet, but it was only a matter of time. The world was judging her for something she didn't do. She opened her bag and pulled out a small velvet box, her old wedding ring, Tiffany & Co., engraved with Ryan's initials. The symbol of everything she'd believed in. She stared at it for a long time, then dropped it into the trash can beside her. The metallic clink echoed like a farewell. When she returned upstairs, a nurse met her halfway. "He's awake." Her heart stopped. "What?" Emily rushed into the room. Alexander's eyes were open, tired but clear. He looked at her, trying to smile through the pain. "You're safe?" She nodded, tears spilling down her face. "Because of you." He tried to sit up, wincing. "I've been through worse." "Don't move," she said softly. "The doctor said you need rest." Alexander studied her for a moment. "You shouldn't be here. He'll come for you again." "I don't care," she replied. "I'm done running." He frowned, as if testing her strength. "Then promise me something. If anything happens, you'll protect the child first." Emily took his hand, trembling. "You don't get to talk like you're leaving." For the first time, he smiled faintly. "You sound like someone who's already decided to fight back." She squeezed his hand tighter. "Maybe I have." And in that moment, under the soft hum of machines, Emily Carter stopped being a victim and started becoming a storm. Rain hammered against the glass walls of Mount Sinai Hospital that evening, turning the city beyond into a blur of silver and blue. Emily stood by the window, one hand pressed to her belly, watching the storm rage like the one inside her chest. For the first time since the shooting, she wasn't just afraid, she was angry. Alexander was asleep again, pale but breathing steady. His assistant Grace sat nearby, answering calls on her iPhone in a hushed tone. "Yes, Mr. Reed's surgery was successful." "No, we're not releasing a statement," she said sharply. Then, lowering her voice, "And tell the press to stop calling her the mistress. That woman is his designer, not his scandal." Emily flinched at the word mistress. It made her stomach twist. She'd done nothing wrong, yet the world already painted her as the villain. She turned away from the window, pacing. "They think I was part of this circus." Grace closed her laptop. "You can't stop people from talking, but you can control what they see next." Emily frowned. "What do you mean?" "Reputation management," Grace said. "Alex built empires out of chaos. When he wakes up, he'll want to help you clear your name, not just for justice, but for survival. Ryan's company still holds your design contracts. If he ruins your credibility, you'll lose everything." Emily's throat tightened. He already took everything that mattered. Grace studied her for a moment. "Then don't let him keep it." That night, Emily wandered into the hospital chapel. The silence there was thick, broken only by the soft hum of fluorescent lights. She sank onto a wooden pew, clutching the tiny ultrasound photo she kept in her purse. "You deserve a better world than this," she whispered. "I'll make sure of it." The door creaked open behind her. Detective Hayes stepped in, his trench coat damp from the rain. "I figured I'd find you here," he said gently. "We located the car. Ryan ditched it outside a rental cabin near the Hudson River. But when we got there, it was empty. Chloe's missing too." Emily looked up, heart pounding. "Missing?" He nodded grimly. "Neighbors heard shouting last night. A woman screaming. No sign of her now. Maybe she ran, maybe worse." A chill ran down Emily's spine. Ryan had become unpredictable, violent. If he'd turned on Chloe, she could be next. "Don't panic," Hayes added. "We've placed officers outside this hospital. You're under protection until we get him." But Emily knew protection meant little against obsession. Ryan knew her patterns, her fears, her routines. He used to call it love. Now it felt like a curse. When she returned to the ICU, Alexander was awake again, his eyes sharper this time. "You shouldn't be alone," he said hoarsely. "If he's missing, you're in danger." Emily sat beside him, You can barely breathe. And you're still worrying about me. He managed a weak grin. Old habits. I don't like watching people I care about get hurt. The room fell silent. The hum of the monitors became the rhythm of unspoken things between them. I'm not the same woman who walked into that gala, Emily said quietly. He tried to break me, but he just woke something else up. Alexander studied her face. The storm reflected in his eyes. Then, let's use that. If Ryan wants to destroy you, we'll make sure he destroys himself instead. Emily leaned forward, determination hardening her voice. Tell me what I have to do. Because for the first time in her life, Emily Carter wasn't praying for mercy, she was planning her revenge. 2 weeks later, the winter sun crept across the glass towers of Manhattan. Emily Carter stood before the mirror in Alexander's penthouse, staring at a woman she barely recognized. The bruises had faded, but the shadows under her eyes told another story. Her silk blouse hung loosely over her growing belly, and her hair, once soft curls, now framed her face with quiet fire. She had moved into the penthouse after the police insisted she stay somewhere secure. Alexander had refused to return to his own estate while she was still at risk. His wound was healing, though the pain sometimes made him wince. Yet every morning, he walked beside her as if his presence alone could shield her. That day, Alexander leaned on the marble counter, sipping black coffee from a Tiffany blue mug. You look stronger, he said softly. That's good, because we're about to draw him out. Emily met his eyes. You think he'll come after me again? He will, Alexander said. Men like Ryan don't know how to lose, but this time he'll walk into a trap he can't escape. Grace entered, holding a folder of documents. We found something, she said. Ryan transferred large sums from your joint account to an offshore company under Chloe's name. He's laundering money through her influencer brand. And if we expose that, he'll crumble. Emily's pulse quickened. Can we prove it? Alexander nodded toward his MacBook Pro. We already did. He used your signature on several of the documents. Forgery. That's enough for prison. For a moment, Emily couldn't breathe. He used my name to cover his crimes, while trying to kill me. Grace's voice was calm but firm. Now it's your turn to take everything back. That afternoon, Emily and Alexander met Detective Hayes at a quiet corner of the River Cafe in Brooklyn. Snow drifted over the East River, the skyline reflected in the icy water. Emily clutched her scarf as she slid the flash drive across the table. Everything's here. Bank records, email chains, even video calls with Chloe. Hayes raised an eyebrow. How did you get all this? Alexander's lips curved faintly. Let's just say I still have friends in cybersecurity. The detective smiled. You two make a hell of a team. I'll take this to the DA. But Emily, be careful. When Ryan realizes he's cornered, he'll get desperate. Emily nodded. He already is. Back at the penthouse, she found an envelope slipped under the door. No name, no address. Just her name, written in Ryan's handwriting. Her stomach turned as she unfolded the note. You think you're safe behind his money? Wait until he learns who you really are. Her hands shook. He knows where we live. Alexander read the note, his jaw tightening. He's bluffing. But she saw the flicker of worry in his eyes. Later that night, as she sat in the nursery, they'd begun preparing pale walls. Soft music playing from an iPad, she felt both comfort and dread. The baby kicked again, stronger this time, reminding her that there was something pure left to fight for. Alexander appeared at the door, his voice gentle. You should sleep. Tomorrow we go public. Public? He nodded. We'll leak the story before he does. The press loves a redemption arc, and they'll eat up a pregnant woman standing up to corruption. You'll get your name back, Emily. She took a deep breath. And what about Ryan? Alexander's eyes darkened. When the world learns what he did, he won't have a name left to ruin. Outside, the snow kept falling soft, cold, and silent as somewhere in the city, Ryan Mitchell loaded another bullet into his gun. The next morning, Manhattan awoke under a thin veil of snow. Emily sat at the dining table of Alexander's penthouse, scrolling through the headlines on her iPhone. Her name was everywhere now. Pregnant designer survives husband's murder attempt, billionaire hero steps in. Photos from the gala filled the internet. Ryan smiling beside Chloe, then the image of Emily crying in her silver gown. She hated the attention, but she couldn't look away. Every headline was another knife, twisting the truth. Yet beneath the noise, something else had changed: sympathy. Strangers online were calling her brave. Women shared their own stories of betrayal and survival. For the first time in months, Emily didn't feel invisible. Alexander entered the room, dressed sharply in a gray suit. "You did well," he said. "People see you differently now. You control the narrative." Emily looked up. "But Ryan's still out there. He's running out of places to hide," Alexander replied, tapping his Mont Blanc pen against a file. "Once the DA moves, it's over for him." Grace appeared with her laptop. "The press conference is set for noon. We'll stream it live from the office downtown. You'll tell your side. Calm, honest, no drama, let the truth destroy him." Emily nodded, rehearsing the lines she'd written the night before. She wanted justice, not revenge. But deep down, she also wanted Ryan to feel it: the humiliation, the loss, the pain she'd lived through. Hours later, they arrived at Alexander's company headquarters on Park Avenue. Reporters swarmed outside, flashing cameras as they stepped from the Mercedes. The lobby shimmered with winter light, marble floors reflecting the chaos beyond the glass doors. Emily felt her heartbeat rise, but Alexander's hand on her shoulder grounded her. "You're not alone," he whispered. The conference began. She stood behind a podium, microphones like sharp metal flowers pointing toward her. "My name is Emily Carter," she began, her voice steady. "I am here today because someone tried to erase me, my work, my marriage, my life. But I survived." The crowd went silent. Flashbulbs flickered. She continued, "No woman should ever have to fear the person who promised to love her. And no man, no matter his power, should believe he can silence truth with violence." Alexander watched from the side, pride flickering behind his calm expression. Grace streamed the event live, over 2 million viewers in the first hour. But in the back of the room, unseen by security, a man in a dark coat slipped through the side entrance. A cap shadowed his eyes. Ryan. He moved like a ghost, blending into the crowd, watching his wife take back her life, the life he believed was his to control. His jaw tightened as the room applauded her final words. When it ended, Emily exhaled, feeling the weight lift slightly. "It's over," she whispered, but Alexander's phone buzzed. A message from Detective Hayes. "We lost track of him." "Be careful." Alexander looked up sharply. "We need to leave. Now." Before she could ask why, the power flickered. The lights dimmed. A loud pop echoed through the lobby, glass shattering. Screams erupted. Security rushed forward as Emily froze. Smoke filled the air, acrid and sharp. Alexander grabbed her hand, pulling her toward the emergency exit. "Stay behind me," he shouted. The sound of footsteps echoed heavy, furious, closing in. Through the haze, she saw a familiar figure emerge, gun raised, eyes burning with hate. Ryan. And in that instant, Emily knew the past wasn't done with her, it had just found her again. The world seemed to freeze in that single, terrible second. Ryan's eyes locked onto hers, wild and sunken, like a man who had already lost everything and decided to take the rest with him. The gun in his hand trembled slightly, but his voice was steady. "You ruined me, Emily," he hissed, stepping closer through the haze of broken glass. "You made me a joke." Emily's breath caught in her throat. "Ryan, stop. There are people here. The police will." "I don't care," he shouted, his voice cracking. "I loved you. I gave you everything, and you let him take it." He pointed at Alexander, who stood a few feet away, shielding her. "Lower the gun, Mitchell," Alexander said calmly, though his jaw was tight. "This isn't the way," Ryan sneered. "Easy for you to say, billionaire hero. You already have her." The sound of sirens began to wail in the distance, faint but growing closer. Still, Ryan didn't flinch. His finger twitched on the trigger. Emily's heartbeat pounded so hard it felt like it might burst through her chest. "Think of the baby," she whispered. "Ryan, please. This isn't who you are." For a moment, his eyes softened, but only for a moment. "The baby," he said bitterly. "You think I believe it's mine?" The words hit her like a slap. "You're insane." He took another step forward, gun raised higher. Alexander moved instantly, pushing Emily behind him. The shot rang out. The glass behind them exploded, shards flying like knives. Screams filled the lobby. Reporters scattered. Security rushed forward, tackling Ryan to the ground. Another gunshot, this time from one of the guards, echoed through the chaos. And then silence. Emily's ears rang as she clutched Alexander's arm. "Are you hurt?" she asked, panic flooding her voice. He checked his shoulder. The bullet had grazed his suit, but missed flesh. "I'm fine," he said, pulling her close. Ryan lay on the marble floor, blood seeping from his side, the gun knocked away. His chest rose and fell unevenly. "You ruined everything," he gasped, staring up at her. Emily knelt a few feet away, trembling. "No, Ryan, you did that yourself." Police stormed the building moments later, followed by Detective Hayes. He took in the scene quickly, the broken glass, the reporters cowering, the wounded man on the floor. "Get him out of here," he barked. Officers lifted Ryan onto a stretcher. As they passed, Ryan's gaze met hers one last time. "You'll regret this," he whispered, his voice fading. "You don't know the whole story." The words lingered like smoke. Emily turned to Alexander, confusion in her eyes. "What does he mean?" Alexander shook his head. "He's trying to manipulate you. Don't let him." But deep down, a part of her hesitated. There was something in Ryan's tone, not rage, but desperation. Something he hadn't told her. Outside, the press had already turned the chaos into breaking news. CEO saves pregnant woman, again gunfire at press event. Cameras flashed as Emily was escorted into a waiting SUV. She buried her face in her hands, shaking. Alexander's voice was low, steady. "It's over, Emily. He's in custody. You're safe now." But Emily didn't feel safe. She felt watched. As the car pulled away from the building, she caught sight of something in the rearview mirror, a figure standing beyond the police line, watching them disappear into traffic. It wasn't Ryan. It was Chloe, and she was smiling. Because the story wasn't over, it was just turning darker than anyone had imagined. The SUV's tinted windows blurred the city lights as they drove away from the chaos. Emily's hands were still trembling. Her heartbeat hadn't slowed since the shots. Beside her, Alexander sat silent, his expression tight, jaw clenched as he replayed the scene in his mind. But Emily wasn't thinking about Ryan anymore. She was thinking about Chloe, that flash of red lipstick, that icy smile beyond the police line. The way she had been watching, waiting. She was there, Emily whispered. Alexander turned. "Who?" "Chloe," she said. "I saw her outside. After the shooting." His brow furrowed. "Impossible. She's supposed to be in hiding. The FBI said." "I know what I saw." Emily's voice shook but stayed firm. She looked different, not scared, almost proud. Grace, sitting in the passenger seat, turned slightly. "That woman's a snake. Maybe she's planning her next move." Alexander nodded. "Then we plan ours first." Back at the penthouse, the atmosphere felt heavier than before, the city below humming like a restless beast. Emily sat on the couch, clutching a blanket, watching the snow fall past the wide windows. Her reflection looked pale and haunted. "He said I didn't know the whole story," she murmured. Maybe he wasn't lying. Alexander poured himself a glass of scotch. "Don't let his words poison you." "But what if he was covering for her?" Emily asked. "What if Chloe's the one pulling the strings?" He set the glass down. "Then we find out." Grace opened her laptop again. "Already on it," she said, fingers flying over the keys. "Chloe's accounts went dark last night. No posts, no stories, no new followers. But look at this." She turned the screen toward them. Her influencer brand, Summerlight Studio, just received a wire transfer, $200,000. From a shell company in the Caymans, same one Ryan used. Emily's eyes widened. "So she's still moving money." "Which means," Alexander said slowly. She's not running from him. She's running with something. Grace's expression darkened. Maybe leverage. Maybe something she can sell if things go bad. Emily looked down at her belly, hand resting protectively there. If she knows where he kept the money, she'll come for me next. I'm still the link. Alexander walked over, placing a steady hand on her shoulder. Then she'll find I'm standing in the way. That night, Emily tried to sleep but couldn't. Every creak of the penthouse made her flinch. The city outside glittered under the moon, cold and endless. She finally reached for her Kindle, a habit from before the nightmare began, but the words on the screen blurred. Her mind kept drifting back to Chloe's smile. Around 2 a.m., her phone buzzed. A new message from an unknown number. He's not who you think he is. Meet me at Pier 17. Come alone. Emily froze. The profile picture was blank, but the text felt deliberate, taunting. She read it again and again, her pulse rising. She typed a reply. Who is this? But before she could send it, Alexander's reflection appeared behind her in the glass. What are you doing? She turned quickly. Nothing. I couldn't sleep. He studied her, his voice low. If anything happens, you tell me first. Promise? She nodded. But deep inside, she knew she wouldn't. Because if Chloe had answers, if Ryan's madness wasn't the whole truth, she had to hear it for herself. Outside, the snow turned to rain, streaking down the window like tears. Somewhere by the dark river, a figure waited beneath the city lights, and Emily Carter was about to learn that saving her life had come with a price she hadn't yet begun to pay. The night air off the East River was sharp, slicing through Emily's coat as she walked toward Pier 17. The city's skyline shimmered behind her like 1,000 indifferent eyes. Every step echoed against the wooden planks, the rhythm of her heartbeat in sync with the soft crash of the waves below. She shouldn't have come. Alexander had warned her. Grace had begged her to stay inside, and Detective Hayes had ordered police surveillance near the penthouse. But the message wouldn't stop replaying in her mind. He's not who you think he is. She had to know the truth. The pier was almost empty, except for a few distant fishermen and the faint glow of a street lamp flickering near the end. That's when she saw her Chloe Summers, dressed in a black trench coat and heels far too high for the cold, her blonde hair whipped in the wind like gold silk. Emily, Chloe said, voice smooth, almost gentle. You came. Emily stopped a few feet away, her pulse racing. What do you want from me? Chloe smirked. Maybe the same thing you want to survive. Ryan's in custody, Emily said. You should be too. Oh, sweetheart. Chloe laughed softly, stepping closer. Ryan's not the monster you think. He's just a pawn. He took the blame for something much bigger, something your hero forgot to mention. Emily frowned. My hero? Chloe's eyes gleamed. Alexander Reed, the billionaire savior. Did he tell you why he was really at that gala? Did he tell you that he and Ryan were partners before he cut him out? Emily froze. That's not true. Oh, it is. Chloe pulled a folded paper from her pocket and tossed it at Emily's feet. Read it. That's a contract. Reed promised Ryan a 40% stake in a startup deal worth hundreds of millions, then stole it right under his nose. Ryan's meltdown, his violence. Reed lit the match. The words hit Emily like a physical blow. Her hands trembled as she picked up the paper, the cold wind nearly tearing it away. The signatures were there, Alexander's and Ryan's. I don't believe you, she said, though her voice wavered. You don't have to, Chloe replied. But ask yourself, why did a man like him risk his life for you? Because of guilt, darling, not love. Emily stepped back, shaking her head. No. He saved me. He protected me. Chloe smiled sadly. Or maybe he's protecting his secret. Ryan was about to expose him the night of the gala. That's why he lost control. The sound of footsteps behind them made Emily spin around. Alexander. His navy coat flapped in the wind, his eyes darker than she'd ever seen them. Enough, Chloe, he said coldly. You've said your piece. Chloe's smirk vanished. So it's true, she said. You did this. Alexander didn't deny it. Ryan made his choices. He crossed lines no deal could justify. Emily's voice cracked. Tell me she's lying, Alex. He hesitated. That hesitation was her answer. Her heart broke open. You used me, she whispered. You used everything. He took a step toward her. Emily. Listen. But Chloe pulled a small pistol from her coat, aiming it straight at him. No more lies. The next second felt endless, a flash, a scream, the sound of the shot echoing across the pier. Emily fell to her knees as the gun clattered to the ground. Someone was bleeding, collapsing beside the railing. The snow began to fall again, silent, merciless. And in that frozen moment, Emily realized that in this war of love and power, truth was the most dangerous weapon of all. The gunshot cracked through the night, like lightning splitting the world in half. The echo rolled over the East River, swallowed by the wind and the hum of distant traffic. For a moment, Emily couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Her eyes darted from Chloe to Alexander, and then she saw the red blooming across Chloe's shoulder. Chloe dropped the gun, gasping, clutching her wound. The weapon skittered across the pier and landed near Emily's feet. Alexander stood frozen, his arm half raised. He hadn't been the one to shoot. Behind him, Detective Hayes stepped from the shadows, his pistol still smoking. Drop it. Hands where I can see them, Hayes shouted, his voice echoing over the wooden planks. Emily stumbled backward, heart hammering. Detective, Hayes kept his gun steady. I followed you. I told you not to meet her. He glanced at Chloe, bleeding but alive. Looks like I was right. Chloe sneered, wincing in pain. You think this changes anything? Reed's not innocent. He's just cleaner at getting his hands dirty. Shut up, Alexander snapped, stepping forward, but Hayes blocked him. Not another step, Reed, the detective warned. You've got a lot of explaining to do. Emily's voice trembled. Detective. She said Alexander and Ryan were business partners. Is that true? Hayes hesitated, his gaze flickering between them. There was a connection, he admitted. Old deal, long dead. But Ryan went rogue, started using Reed's name to launder money. That's when things turned ugly. Alexander's jaw tightened. She's twisting everything. Ryan used the contract to blackmail me after I cut ties with him. That's why he wanted you gone, Emily, to hurt me. Chloe laughed bitterly. Typical. Billionaires never take responsibility. You took his pride, his career, and then you stole his wife's sympathy. Emily's chest constricted. Stop, she shouted, tears burning her eyes. You're both monsters in your own way. Ryan tried to kill me. And you? She turned to Alexander, voice breaking. You used me as your redemption story. The silence that followed was worse than the chaos. The snow fell heavier now, soft flakes melting on her cheeks like cold tears. Alexander's expression softened, guilt flickering in his eyes. Emily, that night at the gala. I didn't plan to save you for any reason but one. You reminded me what humanity felt like again. I swear to you, everything since then, every step was real. Emily shook her head, backing away. I don't know what's real anymore. Hayes' radio crackled. Back up en route, a voice said. Chloe groaned, slumping against the railing, blood dripping onto the wood. You think you've won, sweetheart? Wait until the world finds out your hero built his empire on a lie. Hayes motioned for a medic team waiting nearby. Take her, he ordered. Officers rushed forward, lifting Chloe onto a stretcher. Emily turned to leave, but Alexander caught her wrist. His grip was gentle, desperate. Don't walk away from me like this. You don't know everything. She met his eyes, her voice low and cold. Then tell me something that makes me believe you're not just another man who destroys everything he touches. He hesitated, and that hesitation told her everything. She pulled her hand free, tears streaming down her face. I don't need saving anymore, Alex. I just need the truth. And with that, she turned and walked into the falling snow, her silhouette fading into the city's glow. Behind her, Alexander stood alone on the pier, his breath forming white clouds in the cold air, the weight of his secrets heavier than the gun still lying at his feet. Because love built on lies doesn't die, it rots. And somewhere deep inside, Emily Carter was done being anyone's redemption. Snow turned to rain as Emily walked through the empty Manhattan streets, her heels clicking against the wet pavement. The city lights blurred behind the film of tears in her eyes. Every memory of the last few months flashed before her: the gala, the gunshot, Alexander's arms shielding her, the confession, the lies. Everything she thought she knew about love, loyalty, and safety had crumbled. By the time she reached the corner of 59th and Park, she could barely breathe. Her phone buzzed in her coat pocket. Grace. She ignored it. Then came another call, and another. Finally, she answered, her voice raw. "What do you want?" "Emily, thank God," Grace said, her tone tight with panic. "Where are you?" "Somewhere I should have been from the start, alone." "You can't be alone right now. You don't understand. There's more to this. Ryan's been transferred from police custody. The feds took over because—" Grace stopped, hesitating. "Because what?" "Because there's evidence someone higher up helped him cover the money trail." "Emily," Grace's voice dropped. "It points to Alexander's company. His CFO's already disappeared." Emily stopped dead on the sidewalk. The sound of rain pounding on the umbrella above her seemed to vanish. "You're saying he was part of it?" "I'm saying it's all tangled. And you're in the middle of it. Come back, please." Emily ended the call, her breath shaking. The wind bit through her coat, but she barely noticed. She stared across the street at a small cafe, one she and Ryan used to visit before everything went dark. Without thinking, she stepped inside. The smell of roasted coffee and vanilla filled the air. A young couple laughed at a corner table, the warmth of their joy almost painful to watch. Emily ordered a decaf latte, her hands trembling as she took the cup. The barista smiled politely, unaware she was serving a woman whose life had just burned to the ground. When she sat down, she saw the news notification flash across her iPhone screen. "Alexander Reed under investigation for fraud allegations. FBI confirms links to Mitchell case." Her chest tightened. She read every word, every quote. Anonymous sources claimed Alexander had used Ryan's company to hide tax losses from an acquisition gone wrong. The same documents he'd used to save her were now evidence against him. It felt like the world had played one long, cruel joke. She stared out the rain-streaked window, her reflection ghostly. "He saved me," she whispered. But maybe just to save himself. The doorbell chimed. A man in a dark coat walked in, tall, broad shoulders, familiar posture. For one wild moment, she thought it was Alexander. But it wasn't. It was Detective Hayes. He spotted her immediately and walked over, removing his hat. "Emily," he said quietly. "We need to talk." "About what?" she asked flatly. "About the file you gave us," he said. "You didn't just expose Ryan. You exposed Reed, too, whether you meant to or not." Her voice cracked. "So I destroyed them both." Hayes nodded. "Sometimes the truth doesn't save anyone. It just burns the rot out." He leaned forward. "But there's something else. Chloe's disappeared again. Someone bailed her out before dawn. Private account. Offshore money. My guess, the same shell company Ryan used." "This isn't over." Emily clenched her fists. "Then I'll finish it." Hayes frowned. "You're pregnant, exhausted, and the most hunted woman in New York. You need to think clearly." She looked up, her eyes cold. "I am thinking clearly. I'm done being a story written by men with secrets. It's my turn." Outside, thunder rolled over the city, and for the first time, Emily Carter wasn't running from the storm, she was walking straight into it. The storm over Manhattan raged all night, lightning flashing between skyscrapers like the sky itself was tearing apart. Inside the penthouse, Emily packed her things in silence. Her hands were steady now, not from calm, but from resolve. The time for fear was over. She folded baby clothes into a small duffel, her movements careful, deliberate. On the table beside her lay two things: a Mont Blanc pen Alexander had once given her, and the USB drive containing the files that had started everything. The pen was still smooth and gleaming, the drive scratched and cold, symbols of both the man who saved her and the man who broke her. A faint knock echoed through the room. She froze. "Who is it?" "It's me," came a familiar voice. "Grace." Emily opened the door. Grace looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes. Coat soaked from rain. She stepped in quickly, closing the door behind her. "We don't have much time," she said. "The feds just raided Reed Global's headquarters. Alexander's missing." Emily's heart thudded. "Missing?" Grace nodded. "His car was found near the Brooklyn Bridge. Engine running. Door open. No sign of him." Emily felt her stomach twist. "You think he ran?" Grace hesitated. "Or someone made him disappear." They stood in silence for a moment, the city's sirens wailing faintly below. Emily finally said, "Then I have to find him." Grace's eyes widened. "Absolutely not. You're 8 months pregnant, the FBI's circling, and Chloe's still out there. You need to get somewhere safe." Emily picked up the USB drive. "Safety doesn't exist anymore. The only way out is through." She slipped on her coat, grabbing her umbrella and her phone. Grace sighed but followed. "You know, you're starting to sound just like him." "Maybe that's what it takes to beat people like them," Emily replied quietly. They reached the garage, rain pounding against the concrete. Grace's Tesla sat waiting, headlights cutting through the fog. As they pulled into the street, Emily watched the city blur past the plaza, where it all began, glittering like a cruel memory. "Where are we going?" Grace asked. "Pier 17, Emily said. "That's where it fell apart. That's where it ends." Grace glanced at her. "You think he'd go back there?" "I think that's where he'd want me to find him," Emily murmured. When they arrived, the pier was nearly deserted, slick wood gleaming under the rain, the smell of salt and diesel in the air. Emily stepped out, her boots splashing in puddles. Lightning illuminated the empty riverfront, and then she saw him. Alexander stood near the edge, coat soaked, eyes hollow. He looked like a man who'd stopped fighting the storm and decided to let it take him. "Emily," he said, his voice raw, "you shouldn't be here." She walked closer, rain dripping from her hair. "Neither should you. But here we are." He gave a bitter smile. "They took everything. My name, my company, my reputation. Ryan may have started it, but Chloe finished it." Emily's tone hardened. "No, Alex, you finished it. When you lied to me." His shoulders slumped. "I thought I could fix what I broke, that saving you would balance the scales, but it only made me realize how deep I'd fallen." She took a step closer, holding out the USB drive. "Then help me fix what's left. This isn't just your redemption anymore. It's justice for all of us." He looked at the drive, then at her face, the woman he'd nearly destroyed and somehow still wanted to protect. Slowly, he reached for it. Thunder cracked above them. From the shadows at the far end of the pier, a voice called out cold and clear, "Touch that drive, and you both die." Emily turned. Chloe stood there, holding a gun. And this time, there was no detective to stop her. Rain streamed down Chloe's face, blurring the mascara that had once made her look untouchable. Now she looked feral, a cornered animal, with nothing left to lose. The gun in her hand gleamed beneath the pier's floodlight, steady despite the trembling of her lips. Alexander stepped instinctively in front of Emily, his arms outstretched. "Chloe, put it down. You're hurt, exhausted. Whatever this is, it's not worth dying for." "Dying?" Chloe laughed bitterly, a hollow sound swallowed by thunder. "You think I'm afraid of that? I've been dying since the moment you both turned me into a headline." She pointed the gun at Emily. "You, the saint, the victim. Everyone loves you. They don't know you're standing on my blood." Emily's heart pounded, but her voice was calm. "I didn't take anything from you. You took it from yourself when you helped him hurt people." Chloe sneered. "Helped? I built Ryan's empire while you played house. I'm the one who found his investors, handled the dirty deals, smiled while you decorated his penthouse. Without me, there's no fortune, no fraud to clean. You both profited from my dirt." "Stop lying," Alexander snapped. "You manipulated him. You used both of us." "I used everyone," Chloe said coldly. "Because that's what it takes to survive in your world. But I made one mistake. I fell in love with the wrong monster." Lightning flashed, and for a moment, Emily saw it, the crack in Chloe's anger, the wound beneath her cruelty. "Ryan?" Emily asked softly. You loved him. Chloe's chin trembled. He promised me everything. Then he hit me, blamed me, and left me with nothing. Just like he did to you. Emily took a cautious step forward. Then you know what that feels like. You know what it's like to be used, to be thrown away. Don't become him, Chloe. Chloe's grip faltered, but only for a second. You think you can talk me down? He thought that too, right before he pulled the trigger. Alexander's tone sharpened. Enough. You want money? Power? Fine. Take it. But let her go. Chloe's eyes flicked toward him and something like heartbreak crossed her face. You still think you can buy redemption? She cocked the gun. You can't. The shot exploded before Emily could scream. But the bullet didn't hit her. It didn't hit Alexander either. Chloe staggered backward, eyes wide, a dark stain blooming across her chest. She looked down, disbelieving, as her fingers loosened and the gun slipped from her grasp. Behind her stood Grace, holding a small silver pistol, her hands steady, her face pale as snow. I told you, Grace said quietly. Nobody hurts him again. Chloe tried to speak, but no words came. Her body crumpled onto the wet pier, the rain washing the blood away almost as fast as it appeared. Emily stared in shock. Grace, what did you do? Grace's voice was distant, almost numb. What he couldn't. Alexander stepped forward, grabbing Grace's wrist, gently lowering the weapon. You didn't have to. Yes, I did, Grace said, eyes filling with tears. You saved her once. Now I saved you. Emily knelt beside Chloe, pressing her trembling fingers to the woman's pulse. Faint, weak. She's still breathing, she whispered. Alexander turned toward the shadows. Hayes, we need an ambulance. The detective emerged from behind a police car, rain slicking his coat. Already called. We've been tracking you since you left the penthouse. Emily looked up at him, rain mixing with her tears. Why didn't you stop us? Because sometimes, Hayes said softly, truth has to bleed before it's clean. Paramedics rushed in, lifting Chloe's limp body onto a stretcher. Emily clutched her belly, pain tightening across her abdomen. Alex, she gasped. The baby. He caught her before she fell, eyes wide with fear. Stay with me, Emily. Sirens wailed again. The storm roared, and as the blue lights flashed over the pier, Emily Carter realized this story wasn't ending in blood, it was rebirthing in it. The ambulance siren wailed through the flooded streets of Manhattan, slicing the night open. Inside, Emily lay on a stretcher, one hand gripping Alexander's trembling fingers, the other clutching her stomach. The contractions came hard and fast, each one sharper than the last. Sweat and rain mixed on her forehead, her hair sticking to her cheeks. Stay with me, Alexander whispered, his voice breaking through the chaos. You're going to be okay. Both of you. Emily tried to breathe, but every inhale felt like glass. It's too soon, she gasped. It's not time. The paramedic beside her shook his head. The baby's coming now. We'll be at Mount Sinai in 5. Alexander looked down at her, panic flickering in his eyes, a man used to controlling every deal, every number, every room, now helpless before something raw and unstoppable. Emily, listen to me, he said, his voice low but firm. You've survived worse than this. You can do it. She gave a weak laugh through the pain. You're giving pep talks now. You should have stuck to business plans. Lightning flashed outside. The ambulance jolted over a pothole, making her cry out. Alexander squeezed her hand tighter. I'm right here, he said. I'm not leaving. Don't make promises you can't keep, she whispered, tears sliding down her face. His reply was soft but fierce. This one, I can. At the hospital, the emergency team was ready. The doors burst open, voices overlapping. Code maternity trauma. She's dilated. Get Dr. Lewis. They wheeled her into a bright delivery room, and Alexander was forced to stop at the door. You can't go in yet, a nurse told him. He froze. I'm not leaving her. The nurse's voice softened. Then pray for her. Hours blurred into minutes. Emily screamed, cried, pushed, fought. The pain was unbearable. But underneath it all was something stronger, a will forged from every betrayal, every scar, every loss. She wasn't just fighting for life. She was fighting to prove she could still create something pure from all the darkness. Outside, Alexander sat alone on a plastic chair, drenched and shaking. Grace appeared beside him, her arm in a sling from the earlier struggle. "She's strong," she said quietly. "Stronger than both of us." He nodded, staring at the floor. "I never meant to hurt her." Grace looked at him with tired eyes. "Intentions don't matter. Actions do." He ran his hands through his soaked hair. "If she lives through this, I'll spend the rest of my life making it right." Then, from behind the double doors, a sound pierced through the storm of silence, the soft, fragile cry of a newborn. Alexander stood, heart racing. The nurse stepped out, smiling faintly. "A baby girl," she said. Tiny, but breathing strong. He exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for hours. "And Emily? She's weak, but stable," the nurse said. "You can see her now." He walked into the room slowly. Emily lay pale and exhausted, but her eyes were open. In her arms, wrapped in a white hospital blanket, was the baby. "She's perfect," Emily whispered. "Her name's Hope." Alexander knelt beside the bed, brushing a tear from her cheek. "Hope," he repeated softly. "Fitting." Emily smiled faintly. "Because that's what's left when everything else is gone." He reached out, letting the tiny hand grasp his finger. "Then that's what we'll build from Hope." Outside, dawn began to break over Manhattan, the storm finally clearing. But as light filled the room, Detective Hayes entered quietly, holding a manila folder. His expression was grim. "Emily," he said, "there's something you need to know. Chloe didn't die. She's gone." Emily's smile faded. The world tilted again, because even as new life began, the past refused to stay buried. The sun had barely risen when Emily opened her eyes. The rain had stopped, replaced by the soft hum of hospital machines and the tiny heartbeat of the infant sleeping beside her. For one fragile moment, everything felt still, a kind of peace she hadn't known in months. Then the door opened, and Detective Hayes stepped inside, his face shadowed with worry. She knew before he spoke. "She's alive," Emily said quietly. Hayes nodded. "Barely. She disappeared from the ICU around 3 a.m. Security footage shows a nurse helping her into a car. But the nurse wasn't on staff. Fake badge. No record. We think she had help." Emily's pulse quickened. "Help? From who?" "Someone with money," Hayes replied, "and reach." Alexander entered just then, his suit jacket slung over one arm, exhaustion carved into his face. "You mean someone like me?" Hayes turned to him. "You tell me, Reed. Your accounts are under federal lock, but one offshore account in your company's name just wired 50 grand to a shell organization in Miami. Same network that moved Ryan's money." Alexander's expression hardened. "That's not mine. Someone's framing me." Hayes studied him for a long moment, then looked at Emily. "Watch your back, both of you." When he left, silence settled over the room again. Emily looked down at her baby, her small chest rising and falling. "I brought a child into a world full of monsters," she whispered. Alexander sat beside her. "Then let's make sure she never sees them." But his voice sounded distant, distracted. He was staring at his phone, scrolling through a message that had just arrived. No name, no number, just words that chilled them both. "You can't erase what you built together. I'll finish what you couldn't." "Chloe." Emily grabbed his arm. "She's taunting you. She's taunting us," he corrected softly, "because she knows we're still connected. Everything she wants now runs through you, Emily." Her chest tightened. "Then we end this. No more running, no more hiding. I want my daughter to have a mother who isn't afraid to breathe." Alexander looked at her, the woman who'd once been fragile, now forged from pain and steel. "Then we go after her," he said. By nightfall, they were back in the penthouse. Grace had turned the place into a fortress, cameras installed. Security codes changed, armed guards at the door. But Emily couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching. Every flicker of shadow across the glass felt like a warning. Grace appeared with her laptop. I traced the Miami payment. It links to a private charter company. A jet left Teterboro Airport 2 hours ago. Destination, the Bahamas. Alexander nodded grimly. That's her. She's running again. Emily looked out at the skyline. Or waiting. Grace hesitated. Emily, maybe you should stay. You've just given birth. No, Emily interrupted. She's not going to vanish into another paradise while I live in fear. She took my peace, my husband's sanity, and now she wants my future. I won't let her. Alexander exhaled, studying her face. You're not the same woman I met at that gala. No, she said, her voice steady. That woman died the night he shot me. Grace closed the laptop. Then we leave at dawn. If she's in the Bahamas, we'll find her. Emily turned back to the crib, brushing her fingers over her daughter's tiny hand. And when we do, she whispered, this ends forever. Outside, lightning flashed again over the skyline, not a storm this time, but the reflection of something burning in the distance. Because somewhere across the ocean, Chloe Summers was alive and waiting for her revenge to finish what betrayal had begun. The Bahamian sun beat down hard, glinting off the turquoise water like shattered glass. Emily stepped off the small charter plane, clutching her scarf as the humid wind swept through her hair. Just a week after giving birth, her body still ached, but she refused to stay behind. Grace had protested the entire flight, and Alexander had barely spoken, his silence sharp as steel. The island wasn't on any tourist map. It was private, one of those secluded pieces of paradise bought by billionaires who wanted to disappear. Now, it was the last known location of Chloe Summers. They drove through palm-lined roads in a rented jeep, passing empty villas and abandoned construction sites. She's hiding somewhere no one will look, Grace muttered, scanning the GPS. No phone signals for miles, only private networks. Alexander adjusted his sunglasses. She'll expect us to come, which means she already has the upper hand. Emily stared out the window. Then we take it back. They reached a gated property by mid-afternoon, a massive beachfront estate with tall iron fences and a single guard shack. The gold plaque read, Casa Solace. Fitting, Emily thought bitterly. The house of solace for a woman who'd caused nothing but pain. They approached carefully. The guard stepped out, his accent thick. Private property, no entry. Alexander flashed his ID. FBI contract consultant. We're following a lead connected to a federal investigation. The man hesitated, then motioned for them to wait. A minute later, the gate buzzed open. She said you'd come, he said quietly. Emily froze. What did you say? But the guard was already walking away. The jeep rolled up a long driveway lined with palm trees, ending at a white mansion overlooking the sea. The air smelled of salt and jasmine. As they stepped out, the door opened, and there she was, Chloe Summers, alive, elegant, wearing a white sundress and a calm smile, like she hadn't almost died 2 weeks earlier. Welcome to paradise, Chloe said. I was wondering how long it would take. Emily's fists clenched. Why are you doing this? Haven't you destroyed enough? Chloe tilted her head. You still don't understand. I didn't destroy anything. I built it. I made Ryan powerful. I made Alexander richer. And I made you famous. Without me, you'd still be designing apartments for people who forget your name the next day. Alexander stepped forward. Cut the act. You stole from both companies. You used us. She smiled faintly. Maybe, but you used me first. Every one of you men did until I learned how to play your game better. Emily's voice hardened. Then why bring us here? Because I'm done running, Chloe said, walking toward them. I want to finish this on my terms. Grace moved subtly, her hand near her concealed weapon. What terms? Chloe stopped a few feet away, her gaze locked on Emily. You want closure? Then hear the truth. Alexander didn't just partner with Ryan. He gave the order to erase the financial records that buried your name. You were collateral damage, another file to delete. Emily turned to Alexander, stunned. Tell me she's lying. He opened his mouth, but before he could speak, gunfire erupted from somewhere behind the mansion. Bullets tore through the palm leaves. Grace shoved Emily down, shouting, "Ambush!" Chloe screamed, diving for cover. Alexander pulled his handgun, returning fire toward the tree line. The guards from the gate were gone, replaced by armed men in black. "Who are they?" Emily yelled. Chloe shouted back, terrified now. "Not mine, Ryan's. He's out." Emily's blood ran cold. "That's impossible." Alexander pulled her to her feet. "Nothing's impossible anymore. Move." As the roar of the ocean mixed with the crack of bullets, Emily Carter realized Paradise had become a battlefield, and the man she feared most was still alive. Gunfire split the humid air, echoing off the marble walls of the mansion. Emily clutched the baby carrier against her chest as Alexander dragged her behind a stone column. Sand sprayed across the terrace from the bullets hitting the ground. Grace returned fire with calm precision, her movements sharp and practiced. Chloe crouched nearby, her white dress now streaked with dirt and blood. "They said he was dead," Emily shouted over the chaos. Alexander reloaded his pistol. "They said a lot of things." From the tree line, a voice rang out, deep, familiar, venomous. "You never could finish the job, Alex." Emily's heart stopped. Ryan. He stepped into view, dressed in dark fatigues, a rifle slung casually over his shoulder. His left arm was bandaged, and his eyes burned with manic hatred. "You think I'd let you all walk away? You took everything from me?" Chloe stood slowly, trembling. "Ryan, please." "Don't you dare," he snarled, aiming the rifle at her. "You sold me out first." Alexander fired a warning shot, forcing Ryan behind cover. "Emily, move." They ran inside the mansion, slamming the heavy doors shut. The echo of gunfire outside was relentless. Emily's breath came in ragged bursts. "He's supposed to be in custody." "How did he—" "Money," Alexander said grimly. "Someone paid to make him disappear." Chloe leaned against the wall, clutching her wound. "I told you he wasn't done. He has offshore accounts. He bought men, passports, everything." Grace checked her ammo. "Then we end this here." "No more second chances." Emily shook her head. "No. Too many people have died already." Grace's eyes hardened. "If you want to live, you don't get to be merciful." The gunfire outside stopped. Silence the kind that makes your skin crawl. Alexander glanced toward the windows. "He's moving." Suddenly, glass shattered. Ryan crashed through the window like a demon, tackling Alexander to the ground. The two men fought brutally, fists, elbows, blood. The sound of impact echoed through the marble hall. Emily screamed, backing away. Ryan grabbed Alexander's gun, turning it toward him. "You stole my company, my wife, my life," he shouted. Alexander, gasping, spat blood. "You destroyed those yourself." Ryan's finger tightened on the trigger, then a gunshot split the air. For a heartbeat, Emily thought Alexander had fired, but Ryan's expression twisted in surprise. He looked down, saw the red blooming across his chest, and stumbled backward. Chloe stood behind him, gun in hand, her face blank. "You ruined me too," she said softly. Ryan collapsed, the rifle slipping from his grasp. He coughed once, eyes locked on Emily. "You were never innocent." Then his body went still. The silence afterward was unbearable. Emily's hands shook. "He's dead?" Chloe's breathing was ragged. "This time?" "Yes." Alexander sat up slowly, clutching his ribs. "Emily, are you hurt?" She shook her head, though her tears said otherwise. "Why does it always end in blood?" Chloe lowered the gun, her voice empty. "Because that's what men like him understand." Grace moved toward Chloe carefully, taking the weapon. "It's over. We'll call the local authorities." Chloe gave a hollow laugh. "You really think they'll care? We're on private land, owned by corrupt money. By morning, this place will be cleaned, and we'll be ghosts again." Emily looked out the shattered window, where the ocean churned under dark clouds. "Then we make sure the world sees this, every secret, every lie." Alexander nodded, pulling himself up. "We'll upload the files. End it all." Chloe's eyes met Emily's, something almost human flickering there. "If you do that," she whispered, "none of us walks away clean." Emily tightened her grip on her child. Maybe that's the price. Outside, thunder rolled over the island, the final echo of a war that had gone on too long. And as lightning illuminated the bodies and broken glass, Emily Carter realized she wasn't just surviving anymore, she was the one ending the story. The storm had passed by morning, leaving the island cloaked in eerie calm. The once pristine mansion was now a graveyard of shattered glass, broken marble, and blood-stained silence. Emily stood by the open terrace, the ocean stretching endlessly before her. The sun rose in streaks of orange and gold, but it felt hollow, a light too clean for what it revealed. Ryan's body had been taken away before dawn. The Bahamian police arrived, quiet and efficient, pretending not to see the bullet holes or the American passports. Corruption had a way of moving faster than justice. Grace handled the formalities while Alexander sat on the steps, hands clasped, staring into nothing. Emily's baby slept inside a makeshift crib, a hotel blanket folded into a basket. Each tiny breath reminded her why she was still standing. She whispered to the sea, "It's over now. It has to be." But deep down, she knew it wasn't. Chloe emerged from the far end of the hallway, wrapped in a silk robe that wasn't hers, her expression unreadable. "The police are gone," she said. "For now." Emily turned, exhaustion heavy in her voice. "They'll come back. Someone always does." Chloe smirked faintly. "Not here. This island's owned by a Cayman trust. Half of Nassau runs on money from men like Ryan and Alex. Nobody's going to risk touching this mess." Alexander finally spoke, his voice hoarse. "Then we clean it ourselves." He stood, walking toward the table where his laptop lay. The USB drive, the last piece of evidence, sat beside it. "Every transfer, every deal, every name that bought silence is on here," he said. "If we leak it, the fallout will destroy everything connected to Ryan, but it'll destroy me too." Emily stepped forward. "Maybe that's what redemption looks like, not surviving, but surrendering." Grace returned from outside, her clothes still damp. "I've arranged a boat to take us back to Nassau. Once we reach the mainland, I can upload the files through a secure network. No one can stop it once it's out." Alexander hesitated. "Emily, if we do this, there's no going back. You'll be dragged through every headline again." She met his gaze steadily. "Then let them print the truth this time." Chloe laughed quietly. "You really think the truth saves anyone? It just changes who gets blamed." Emily looked at her. "Maybe, but you've spent your life controlling stories. I'm done letting people write mine." Chloe's smirk faded. She stared at the USB drive, then back at Emily. "You think you're free after this? The world will eat you alive and spit you out the second they get bored." "I've seen it." "Then I'll live quietly," Emily said. "I'll raise my daughter far from all of this, but the truth still deserves daylight." Alexander handed the drive to Grace. "Upload it." Grace nodded, plugging it in. The laptop screen flickered to life. Rows of numbers, names, offshore accounts, a decade of corruption scrolling in cold blue light. She pressed send. The progress bar filled slowly. A digital heartbeat counting down the end of an empire. 10%. 40%. 75%. Then, at 100%, Grace exhaled. "It's done." For a moment, no one spoke. The air was heavy, still. Outside, the waves rolled calmly against the shore, as if the world itself had exhaled too. Emily turned toward the ocean, her baby stirring softly in the basket. "Maybe now," she whispered, "we can breathe." But Chloe stepped closer, her voice a whisper of steel. "You have no idea what you've started." Emily met her eyes. "Neither do you." Alexander watched as Chloe turned and walked out into the sunlight, disappearing down the beach. No guards followed. No one stopped her. Grace shut the laptop. "Once the story breaks, the world will change." Emily nodded slowly. "Then let it. Because sometimes the only way to cleanse a poisoned world is to burn it down first," and Emily Carter had just struck the match. The leak crashed onto the internet like a wave swallowing a shoreline. At first it was a trickle anonymous forums, then freelance reporters, then the city's biggest outlets. Within hours, the files Alexander's team had released were everywhere. Bank ledgers, emails, recordings of late-night deals, satellite invoices showing private jets, lists of shell corporations, and account numbers. The headline banners called it the Reed Mitchell Network. The social feeds filled with breakdowns, pundits, commentators, and outraged citizens. Luxury blogs highlighted yacht slips and Park Avenue purchases, finance channels replayed wire transfers, and lifestyle columns detailed Chloe's influencer deals. For the public, the story read like theater. Power, sex, betrayal, and a billionaire's fall. For Emily, it felt different. Not spectacle, but vindication, and a fresh wound. Overnight, messages poured into her phone. Offers of interviews, legal advice, a podcaster asking for exclusives. Alexander's name tumbled alongside Ryan's in a spiral of accusations. The DA announced an emergency inquiry. Regulators froze assets. Advertisers dropped campaigns tied to implicated brands. The world rearranged itself around the scandal. Emily sat in the penthouse, baby asleep in a crib by the window. She watched the news crawl with a strange detachment. People tweeted prayers, others demanded arrests, and late-night hosts feasted on the irony. Grace moved through the apartment like a general, fielding calls, arranging statements, and coordinating security. "Keep her shielded," she told press teams. "No solo interviews, no babies on stage." Alexander called from an undisclosed location, his voice raw with regret. "I never wanted this for you," he said. "I wanted to fix the rot." Emily listened, watching his words reflected in the glass. "Fix it," she replied, "but don't expect forgiveness." The first arrest surprised no one. Ryan's remaining associates were detained as evidence linked them to the laundering networks. Chloe, still wounded, was taken into custody under heavy guard. She refused to speak, her lips sealed like a pact. The press painted her as a master manipulator, but some pieces of the puzzle remained stubbornly opaque. Then came the twist that made global headlines. A whistleblower within Reed Global emerged, releasing an internal memo showing Alexander had indeed approved a secret severance and the transfer protocol to keep Ryan quiet years earlier. The memo was cold, bureaucratic, and damning. Investors pulled out. The stock dropped. Priced ads vanished overnight. Alexander's name was scrubbed from charity boards. Yet amid the collapse came an unexpected consequence for Emily. Donors, survivors, and advocacy groups rallied to her side. Women who had watched the gala years ago poured out their stories, donations, and offers of help. A foundation appeared overnight, dedicated to protecting domestic violence survivors, funded by anonymous philanthropists who had been shamed into private donations years before. Emily found herself at the center of a reckoning she hadn't asked for. Interviewers wanted her voice. Victims sought her counsel. She declined major network sit-downs, choosing instead to appear at small community centers and hospital rooms, her presence quiet but fierce. She used the platform to advocate for better protection, legal reforms, and funding for pregnant victims. Her words were simple, but they carried weight. Meanwhile, Alexander fought back in court, his lawyers slicing technicalities, and media strategists trying to salvage fragments of reputation. He waived compensation to avoid appearing self-interested and donated his remaining assets to relief funds. But the leaked memo became the fulcrum every prosecutor used. No one escaped untouched. Night after night, Emily held hope, whispering promises of shelter, of warmth, of a small home where laughter lived, work that mattered, long dinners, safe neighbors, gardens, Sundays bright with future. 6 months later, New York looked different. The city had shed its winter skin and come alive again. But for Emily Carter, spring wasn't about the season, it was about survival. The chaos that once defined her life had settled into something quieter, steadier, almost peaceful. She lived now in a small brownstone in Brooklyn Heights, far from the glass towers of Manhattan. The penthouse, the headlines, the whispers all belonged to another lifetime. Her days began with the sound of her daughter's laughter and the smell of coffee brewing in the kitchen. The scars were still there, invisible but real, like faint cracks in porcelain. The world had moved on, but not entirely. The scandal she'd unwillingly ignited had become a landmark case. The Reed-Mitchell leak, as journalists called it, led to 27 indictments and a congressional hearing on financial ethics. Ryan's empire was gone, his properties seized, his name reduced to a cautionary tale. Chloe was serving her sentence in a Miami federal facility, her influencer empire dismantled. Grace had taken a position at a nonprofit, turning her sharp mind toward something purer. And Alexander Reed, once a billionaire titan, awaited trial. Every few weeks, Emily received letters from him. They were handwritten in clean blue ink, each sealed carefully, with the same neat precision he used to sign million-dollar contracts. He never asked for forgiveness. Instead, he wrote about rebuilding, about how he was learning the difference between power and peace. She read the letters but never replied. Some nights, she'd find herself holding one in her hands for hours, tracing the words until her eyes blurred. Because despite everything, the lies, the blood, the betrayal, a part of her still saw the man who had taken a bullet for her. The man who had looked at her not as a headline, but as a woman who refused to break. That morning, as sunlight streamed through the curtains, Emily set Hope down in her crib and walked to the small desk by the window. Her laptop was open to a blank page. She'd been writing again, not for money, not for fame, but for release. The working title glowed on the screen, The Woman Who Lived Twice. She smiled faintly. There was a knock at the door. When she opened it, Detective Hayes stood there, older, but the same calm steadiness in his eyes. "You look better," he said. "I sleep now," she replied with a gentle laugh. "Mostly." He handed her a folder. "Thought you should see this." Inside was a newspaper clipping. Alexander Reed pleads guilty, sentenced to 8 years, donates remaining holdings to Victims Foundation. Hayes said quietly, "He didn't have to. He could have fought it." Emily stared at the headline for a long time. "He finally kept his word," she whispered. "Looks that way," Hayes said. "The DA wanted me to thank you. Your testimony changed how these cases are handled." She nodded, emotion catching in her throat. "Tell them to thank the truth. It did all the work." Hayes smiled. "And what about you? What's next?" Emily looked past him, at the skyline glowing gold in the morning Sunday. "Living," she said simply. "Really living." When he left, she picked up her daughter, holding her close. Hope's small fingers curled around a silver locket that hung from Emily's neck. Inside it, a photo of the life she'd lost and the one she'd fought to build. She whispered softly, "We made it, baby. We finally made it." Outside, the city pulsed with noise horns, laughter, the sound of life moving forward. Emily closed her eyes and breathed it in, every sound, every heartbeat, every piece of her reclaimed story, because she wasn't a victim anymore. She wasn't even just a survivor. She was the woman who had turned pain into purpose, love into strength, and endings into beginnings. And for the first time in forever, Emily Carter was finally free. So that's it. Our story has finally come to an end. And if you're still here, my friend, right here, right now, it means something in this journey has touched your heart in its own quiet way. Maybe it's Emily's courage, or maybe it's the reminder that no matter how dark things get, there's always a sunrise waiting on the other side. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The obstacle is the way." And that's what this story is truly about, turning pain into power and loss into rebirth. Life will test us, betray us, and sometimes break us, but it's what we choose to do next that defines who we are. Healing isn't forgetting, it's learning to breathe again, even when the air still hurts. So take this moment to reflect. What's your hope? What are you still fighting for? If this story spoke to you, if it reminded you that you are stronger than your scars, then don't leave quietly. Hit that like button, share this story with someone who needs it tonight, and subscribe so we can keep walking through these stories together. Because healing isn't something we do alone, it's something we grow through, side by side.